When you think of Finland, the image of Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus in Lapland may spring to mind. Or perhaps the thought of a quiet land where ramshackle cottages dotted beside lakes and vast expanses of forest seem more appropriate. It's said that Helsinki, Finland's capital, is a paradise for lovers of art and architecture, which is all well and good. However, it only takes a second to realise that there is more to this city than just pretty sunsets and reindeer. With over 3 million album sales worldwide, platinum records and a string of #1 hits across Europe, the band, formerly known as His Infernal Majesty, are definitely taking the world by storm, revitalising the goth scene with a new sound and putting the love back into metal.
I was to describe him in one word. Successful.
They are a unit.
I have to say that sexy. I think their music is very sexy.
Chain. You know, it's flexible, but still it's so strong that it's hard to break.
Romantic.
Yeah. I would describe him, it would be love.
And mystic somehow, like inside.
Him is a band that seems to transcend musical achievements and continue to produce poetic, melancholy music that seems to pulsate the message of love and death. But to understand the band, we first have to understand where it all began.
There's maybe like 5 million people living here, and maybe like 10 guys who can be in a rock band and sing as good as Ville Valo.
He's the perfect frontman.
Him's charismatic frontman, Ville Valo, was born in Helsinki in 1976. Growing up in the Valo family was a bit unusual, as father Kari owned a sex shop.
I am Kari Valo, Ville Valo's father. About 5-6 years old. I push him in sport, but interesting more and more music. And I try put Ville in driving school, because Ville is without driving license now. But music takes all time. It's interesting very much music.
As a young boy, Ville had a natural flair for music and soon tried his hand at as many musical instruments as possible.
Ville is about 10 years old. He found first guitar and training very much, and in school he is music class, and they learning many kind of music in the school.
School days were filled with problems, as Ville was regularly in fights and was seen as a disruptive student. At the age of 7, his behaviour had already been carefully monitored because of his antisocial behaviour. Ville was even allowed to draw during classes in an attempt to help him relax.
But Ville is quite good doing painting and drawing, and when Ville is very young, he's drawing cartoons, and his imagination is very good. He's very good. Number one. Yes. When Ville is very young, he liked very much Star Wars stories, and Darth Vader is very near his heart, and he's drawing very much in cartoons, Darth Vader and company, and like very much. We have home all old pictures.
The young Ville submersed himself into the sounds of bands such as Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin and Kiss, as well as the best of folk and country music. Ville worshipped his idols Kiss and began wearing makeup himself.
Sometimes I see Ville doing makeup, and and maybe my wife's sister told that how can he doing this, and later I see Ville many times. He's moving home about 17 years old, and he's starting his career, and very many times he's makeup here and people looking.
Mikko Henrik Julius Pananen, nicknamed Midge, was born in 1974 in Helsinki. His father was an orchestra musician and his mother was an actress, so it was no surprise that he began to have an interest in music. At the age of 12, Midge and Ville first met at school. They both shared a love for the bass guitar and started to jam together regularly.
With Mika and Ville, they're training together very many hours in the afternoon and after they come to school.
Mikko Viljami Lindström, otherwise known as Linde, was born in 1976. His first instrument was an acoustic guitar, which he received when he was 10. He soon enrolled into music classes, where he started to perfect his ambition of becoming a famous guitarist. Ville and Linde first met at senior school and decided to form a band together called Aurora. The band experienced touring at an early age, as they travelled by bus through Europe, playing at local schools and venues. The trip was financed by the band selling donuts and what little money they received for their gigs. This managed to cement their friendship for the time ahead. In 1993, Ville and Linde began recording some demo tracks. School friend Midge was so impressed with the music that he joined them. They created 3 demo tracks entitled Serpent Ride, Borellus and The Heartless. The guys agreed to continue working on new music until they had a good range of songs to promote. Midge and Linde felt Ville should be the band's frontman as they began to try and get gigs.
But I remember being on their first gig in my hometown, Vasa, and there were so few people in there, just a few people, and they played very well, but it was disappointing for them, of course, but it's really funny to think about it now because now they're so huge. They would never have that kind of a gig where there would be only a few people. But I was there and they were great.
It was then time for them to showcase their music at the well-known club Tavastia.
Because Mr. Merimaa, who is boss Tavastia, he liked Ville and give Ville first chance come in Tavastia because Tavastia is best place in Finland.
Over the years, Tavastia's sister club Semi-Final has been known for providing young bands with an opportunity to perform on stage and is run by Tommy Hämäläinen, aka Rudy.
My name is Tommy Hämäläinen, and at the present moment and for the past 12 years I've been running a club called Semi-Final in Helsinki. At Semi-Final 10 years ago maybe, I came across an obviously talented young man, not even 18 at that point, and his name was Ville Valo. And him played their first gig at Semi-Final. It must have been, if I remember correctly, it was 95 New Year's Eve. It was kind of a, at least Ville was playing there, and if I remember correctly, Mika and Linde, possibly 2, but it wasn't him proper yet. He asked me questions about the business and I tried to answer them. Yeah, but it was obvious that he was gifted.
With the band now touting the new EP, there was much speculation as to why they were singing in English. Again, hymns seemed to go against the norm.
In the 1990s, it really wasn't that popular in Finland to sing in English. I think many artists, because we have had, in Finland we have these, disappointments, because we have had these groups that we have tried to send to abroad to make a career, and those bands were singing in English. They were not necessarily doing good in Finland, but we assumed that now, because we have this band singing in English that sounds good, we should, put them abroad and try to make a career outside of Finland. And most of those attempts failed miserably. And I think because of that, we had this skepticism that we shouldn't, have bands singing in English, because they weren't really popular in Finland, and they also had lots of troubles abroad. So I think most of the people were like, okay, let's sing in Finnish. It's more popular in Finland.
Before releasing their first album, Him recorded an EP entitled 666 Ways to Love, Prologue. The EP was released in 1996 and featured a cover version of Chris Isaak's Wicked Game.
Okay, so the first EP came out 1996, and radio started playing Wicked Game on radio a lot. A weird thing happened when they released their first singles. My girlfriend bought them, and it was like, I think that was a sign to me that, okay, this band is going to be big. Because my girlfriend doesn't buy, she might buy album, but she doesn't buy singles, and she bought their first single, I think. And that was a sign to me that, okay, they're going to become really big.
One of the things has to be, as I say, the commercial element of the rock they're doing. Not just the goth side of it. I mean, they had a massive success with a Chris Isaak cover, Wicked Game. That took them, obviously, into fans of Chris Isaak. Now, Chris Isaak fans obviously aren't goth, but they did such a good version of it. It was acceptable, and it's a great song to play on the radio.
We've always been playing loads of cover tunes by Madonna and Ramones and all sorts of weird acts, and it just felt good. That's the reason why we did it.
People know Wicked Game, their version of that song, but still, there wasn't anything, it wasn't like, a huge thing when they released their first EP. It wasn't like a bomb would have exploded. It wasn't anything like that. It was a good song, people know the band, but I think still, people weren't sure what is this, because like that kind of stuff on radio wasn't really popular during that time.
We're turning into a silly, heavy metal jukebox sort of a thing. We've been playing so many cover tunes, so nowadays we're just doing Wicked Game. But that was, we did our first tours in Germany and everywhere else in Europe. We played that a lot, and people seem to like it. It's a good track.
In our playlist here on ARFM, we have about 300 main songs, and Him are up there. They are one of the most popular. We've currently got the Chris Isaak cover still on our A-list because it's one of the most requested songs we've ever had.
With a fair amount of hype surrounding Him's goth metal sound, it didn't take long before the record executives were hot on their tails and offering them contracts. It was A&R executive Asko Kolonen who gave Him their first record deal, quickly signing them to BMG Finland. As in all bands, there is always someone there to make sure the group are in the right place at the right time while on tour.
I'm fucking Mutti. This is what the band calls me, like it's Mama in German. What happened is it was New Year's Eve in '96. I was here in Helsinki and I was going out to a club called Lepako. Lepako means the bat in English. And Him was performing that night. And I was heard of them or saw them the first time. I was when they were, performing, it's shit, what is this? Is this the reincarnation of Jim Morrison or what? I mean, he just looked like that at that time, that curly hair down to his shoulders, and I was just oh goodness, it's so good. So I managed to get backstage and talk to that dude called Ville Valo. I was like, man, do you have a record deal or what, And he was like, well, yeah, we're signed to BMG Finland, and then, yeah, but what outside Finland? Nah, nothing yet. Yeah. He was like, okay, can I do something for you? I was like, oh yes, I would be so pleased, you know. So I walked out to Germany, and it happens that I have my own company, promotion, publishing, and so on, and I'm working very much for BMG. So I thought, okay, easy, you know, they can license it. And I took it out to Germany and said like, hey man, you gotta see that fucking band, you know. So they came over to Finland, we played another gig for them, and deal was done. They were like impressed as I was. Since then, I'm working for them. And I did their first record deal in Germany and 2 other countries. So since then we're working together, I'm doing the promotion for them, all the PR, and assisting to the management and being the mother, you know, for all the little aches which are happening on tour. It's like boys are getting tired sometimes on tour, and you have to like weep them a little bit.
After overwhelming success in Finland, the band had their sights set on breaking the German market, but it wasn't going to be easy.
Let's put it like this, there is not that much media in Germany around, or it was not at that time, to work it through. The radios were saying like, no fucking way, it's too dark, it's too, you know, negative, and we won't play it. So it was really hard to work on it, and I had to convince everybody, you know, like, whoa, come on, it's a fucking great band. And then we had that Wicked Game was actually doing it. And we did like a totally new video for that in Germany with a like well-known producer, and a very fancy video, very expensive video as well. And that finally kicked it off. You know, MTV was going for it, Viva was going for it, and then the radios picked it up.
I've got the strangest feeling, I've got the weirdest feeling, I found my stomach.
The release of Hymn's first official album was entitled Greatest Love Songs Volume 666, which was produced by Hilly Hilsemar. The album is a beautiful romantic mix of ideas about life, love and death. Wicked Game was again featured on the album and proved to be a big hit.
When that first came out in Finland, it was quite a big hit here.
And it made to Finnish album chart, but it didn't go to top 10. It was 11 on the chart, and I think that pretty much tells the story that in Finland at that time, that type of music, of course there was fans and people who were interested in that kind of music, but it wasn't really that popular.
I've got this drowning feeling.
It was a kind of a contemporary gothic rock kind of vibe. A lot of the music that was coming out at that time on the goth scene was it was quite bleepy. There was a bit of an explosion of electro that was happening. A lot of it come over from Europe with bands like Frontline Assembly and Front 242. And what Hymn were doing was different. It was a sort of a return to the kind of classic rock of the goth scene, with bands like Sisters in Mercy, Fields the Nephilim, those kind of bands that were very big in the 80s.
I think it developed throughout the time, when there were more and more playing live, you know, and when people saw more and more of Ville, actually, because he's quite a big presence on the stage when he acts. And that makes a lot also to the success.
But it was a sort of a modernised sound. It had a sort of a pinch of glam rock in it as well, and that's something that's always appealed to me. I've always been interested in the glam rock side of things and goth. So here was a band that kind of merged the two sounds together, and I thought, wow, I've got to find out more.
Him's charismatic and charming sixth member, manager Seppo Vesterinen, is a walking, talking music library. Seppo came across the band in a Helsinki club and liked what he saw.
Seppo became the manager. Actually, that was quite funny. It was like almost the same time I got there. He was like shortly after me. Then all of a sudden, hey, Seppo. And I was like, Seppo who? And like, then I was told like, hey, he's an old legend from Finland, you know. He used to manage Hanoi Rocks. And then he didn't do any band managing for years and years, and now he's back from the grave, you know. And I was like, whoa, all right. But Seppo is such a fucking cool guy, and he has such a huge knowledge about music business. Not only in Europe, also in the States. You know, he knows everything and everybody. You can't fool him. And he is, I think, the backbone of the band.
Him proved that rock was back. The Finnish music scene was about to be revitalised.
During the time when Him made their debut album, 1997, I think the music scene in Finland wasn't really that rock or heavy metal type of thing.
It starts with a spark. A little comfort as the light fades.
In Finland, we always have had this big heavy metal rock scene, and we have great heavy metal bands. We had them in 1990s, but for some reason during that time, 1995, 1996, 1997, in the late 90s, radio here in Finland was playing lots of pop music, dance music, electronic music.
Finland's got a very strong music scene, but I think it's also quite a dark music scene. I mean, you wouldn't... There's an element of darkness about Him. There's an element of darkness about bands like Nightwish. If you listen to a lot of Finnish music, there is, it's almost like, because they don't have a lot of light in the summer or something, it does something to their music.
When you look at the album charts from the late 90s, you can see that there's like Spice Girls and Aqua and like that kind of bands. Well, can you call them bands? I think you can. Girl groups or something like that. And when Him made their debut album, heavy metal music or goth music or that kind of love metal stuff wasn't really that big. And for example, when you look at the album charts, most of the bands in Finland that were successful during that time, they were singing in Finnish, but not in English. And when Him made the debut album, it somehow started this chain reaction where heavy metal music and maybe goth music or stuff like that started to become more popular, and Him had really a great part in that.
They were kind of the spearhead of. We had some pioneers back in the 70s already, back in the 80s with Hanoi Rocks and bands like that, but Him was the first band that made a serious impact.
And they also helped other bands that had been around to get more and more audience in Finland, like the 69 Eyes, a band that is really popular now, and those guys have been around since the early 1990s, but for some reason they made it big after Him released their debut album. I'm not saying that the success of the 69 Eyes is based on the success of Him, but I'm saying that the fact that Him break the barrier somehow helped other bands in Finland too to make it big, and they kind of started this thing where English singing bands, heavy metal bands or bands that play rock music, they became suddenly popular again in Finland.
Him's hard-hitting drummer, Mika Christian Karpinen, better known as Gas, was born in 1971. Before joining Him, he worked as a carpenter. Gas ended up replacing Johanna Rantala, Him's original drummer.
Well, starting from the first album, like Greatest Love Song 666, has been like the most original hymn album. Of course, having their influences by Black Sabbath and stuff like that. Then going like to Razorblade Romance was a big change. Was a very big change because that one was produced much more commercial in a way, and was like the hit album and had this 80s touch, you know.
Razorblade Romance was released in the month of January 2000, quickly reaching double platinum and pushing the band's sales to over 1 million copies worldwide. The long-awaited album proved to be just the type of follow-up the band needed, confirming a musical progression and growing confidence.
So when Razorblade Romance album hit #1 and Join Me in Death, the single from the album, was #1 at the same time in the charts in Germany. Like BMG had a huge party, champagne and blah blah blah, and I was ringing up the band when the charts came through, saying like, wow, we're double #1. No fucking Finnish band has ever reached this before. This is like history now, you know. And the guys were like, nah. And I went, why are you so miserable? No, we're just sitting here at the bar counting our pennies, you know. We can't even make it to 1 beer.
I mean, Razorblade Romance, the album, was really a very, very good album. There wasn't a duff song on it.
But then, of course, we did the tour. We had like 8,000 people or so in venues in Germany. And the band got really scared. They got really frightened. And it was like, sometimes like Ville was on stage and he didn't know how to respond to the huge audience, just like screaming like, Ville, like hysterical, you know. So he turned his back to them and like showing them their butt. And I was like, fuck.
With over 1 million record sales worldwide, it was not hard to notice the impact him were making on the goth scene in the UK.
What impact did they make when they first hit the UK? Quite impressive, I think. It was a slow build-up, but then suddenly accelerated at a massive rate. Became very, very popular over a very short period of time. But not just with young goth fans, they also started to appeal to mainstream rock fans, people who were probably even in their 40s and 50s, liked sort of the old bands like Iron Maiden and Def Leppard, but suddenly we've got this new band with a good commercial edge about them, which appealed across, you know, all the subgenres. The goth scene at the time, pretty quiet, to be perfectly honest. Bands, you know, people were still into bands like the Old Mission and Sisters of Mercy, but there was nothing really new on the scene coming along. There's a lot of fringe scenes in places like Germany and the Scandinavian market, but none of them have really hit the UK.
Probably 2000, I think it was, BMG Records in the UK decided finally that they were going to release Razorblade Romance as an album over here. And they mounted this kind of big advertising campaign. There were ads going into all the major music papers and all that kind of stuff. And they did an album launch party. And me being me, in those days, I didn't have quite so many contacts as I had now. And I managed to blag the album launch party. I snuck in, managed to get there. And they were putting out these CDs of Razorblade Romance, and a lot of the tracks on Razorblade Romance were actually on the original 666 love songs, but they were kind of redone, polished up a little bit, made more friendly for a bigger European audience. And I heard it and I said, yeah, I really like this band and I think they're going to be really big.
This is as far
first heard him around about 2001, I was working in a part of the industry and we started to get a lot of interest from young rock fans who were telling us about this new band in Finland. And I checked them out, and it was really something very different. It was a sort of commercial, sort of gothy feel to the band. Like, you know, there was nothing else like it around at that time, particularly in the UK and probably in Europe.
And I remember writing the first review for them, which was in Meltdown magazine back in the summer of 2000. And my closing sentence was, and I'd be really surprised if this band aren't absolutely massive. But of course, in hindsight, we know it took them a few more years to actually reach that level of success in the UK.
Round about that time in the UK, I mean, the market was basically very bland. I mean, it's always the case in this industry. One particular band will come along and then record companies tend to want to try and sign similar bands. And if you go back to sort of 91, 92, Nirvana started grunge, and then suddenly we had Pearl Jam, we had Alice in Chains, we had various others. So, and we were going through that sort of period when there was nothing really fresh coming out.
I basically was writing articles about them for Meltdown. At that time I was doing a bit of stuff for Metal Hammer as well. I was trying to push for, you know, yeah, please can I do an article on this band. At that stage they weren't actually interested. Of course now you can't open Metal Hammer magazine without seeing pictures of Vila all over the place, and he's just literally won an award, the Metal Hammer Golden Gods Award for Icon of the Year.
HIM have had their fair share of keyboardists. The first was Anto Melas-Niemi, who joined the band in 1997 and left in 1998, citing personality clashes for his departure. Jaska Salminen replaced him, but left almost immediately to concentrate on other things. Jan Johannes Pertinen, aka Burton, was born into a house of artistic parents and proved to be just what the band were looking for. With continued album success, HIM began their European tour. Playing to packed venues of up to 10,000 fans, HIM rightfully took their place as one of Finland's most popular exports. Like most young rock bands, HIM found life on the road a bit tedious and a great opportunity for mischief and mayhem. So what's it like on tour?
To be on tour with these fucking crazy motherfuckers, sorry for speaking like that. It's funny. In the tour bus, it's always two sections, you know. There is the playground and there's the drinking ground. So the playground, usually Gas, our drummer, is sitting there with Burton most of the time, playing these football games, you know. And if not this combination, it's Miget, the bass player, and Burton playing chess. Ville usually sleeps in the tour bus, or then when he's up in the drinking ground, you know, like with Linde, our guitar player, our dearest.
In HIM, the great thing is they really seem to be what they are. They're not trying to be these rock stars. And when you look at Ville Valo on stage, you know, he's not jumping around like crazy or anything like that. He's, you know, this calm guy who smokes and have his bottle, and you know, it seems like he's doing what's the most comfortable for him. He's not trying to you know, think of him as some kind of guy who should, you know, jump around in a stage because some people are doing it.
The most memorable performance for HIM was probably a secret gig that they actually played. They played down at the Underworld in Camden, which is a very small venue. I'm sure that, you know, bands who've played there will say, oh, come on, it's not that small, but it is. In terms of a big band like HIM who can sell out the Astoria, they were playing the Underworld. It was a very small venue and it was very hot. And Ville was a little bit late on stage, and he does have a reputation for liking his Jack Daniels, and he turned up on stage and, how can I phrase this? He was a little bit worse for wear.
It was like party all the way, you know, like whoa, drinking, and riding the bus and yeah, you know, getting wasted.
When he's having his bottle and his cigar, and when he's singing, I think that is enough. He just could stand there for like 2 hours and people would be like...
And he literally spent the entire set just clinging onto the microphone stand and just wobbling and swaying.
But it changed during all those years because, of course, you learn that you have to keep your balance on tour. You just can't push it to the extreme. Otherwise, you like when you're like several months on tour, you're gonna lose your fucking energy and your mind and everything, you know. So the guys learned, they developed. And nowadays it's more easygoing.
They're not the kind of band that are going to have a big song and dance routine. They're not the kind of band who've got fireworks and explosions and God knows what else and female dancers on stage. They're not that kind of a band. I think they're too serious for that. They just want to produce just good quality rock or love metal, as Vila so often describes it.
The semi-final club is part of Helsinki's famous Tavastia Club. It was here that Him staged one of their most memorable gigs ever, performing to an intimate crowd of 150. It was considered to be the show of the year in Helsinki, and many desperate fans were left queuing to get in.
It was Vila's idea. And he just called me and said, how about doing this kind of thing that we play 7 nights in a row at semi-final? I said, yeah, well, it's a crazy idea, but of course we can do it. And they were great gigs, of course they were. I mean, it's a small place, you have the audience have the band right in their face, and it was really nice.
When you see the band up on stage performing, Vila is quite obviously, he's the front man, he's the one right down the front, everybody's looking at him. And the other guys, they do kind of take a bit of a back seat. And the one that really makes me laugh is Mig. He just doesn't look like he's part of the band when he's on stage. He's kind of his head down and he's strumming away and he's like lost. He's in a million miles away, he's somewhere else. And I think it really is the fact that Vila's got this such a strong stage presence that it just sort of gives you a focal point.
That's funny because I mean the relationship between the band and their fans is it's a very warm relationship they have with them. It's like a family gathering that you have.
It wasn't until July 2001 that the band released their third album, Deep Shadows and Brilliant Highlights. In true Him style, the album once again topped the Finnish and Austrian album charts, reaching number 2 in Germany and Switzerland.
Like sounding really American, everybody felt, you know, and a lot of people in the press, in Germany especially, didn't like it too much. They said like, oh, what is this now? This is not Him. This is like really brushed up American shit, you know, American rock. And I didn't think so. I didn't think so at all because Deep Shadows has brilliant songs on it.
Him have now been together for well over 10 years. So what are they like as people?
Well, like old schoolmates, we're 5 of us, we've known each other like past 10 years, so yeah, sure, we fight like cats and dogs.
Gaz is the guy who never gets angry. He is the bright guy of the band, you know, he is the sunshine. He's always making jokes and fun and he's always in a good mood. You can do whatever you want. All the time you ask him something, he's always like, yes. Well, Mijay is the deep thinking guy. You know, he's a very serious guy and he's a very bright guy. And Burton Burton, I mean, he's the newest member of the band, but he is very easygoing. He's always very calm and very relaxed. So you really like don't have any trouble with him either. Lindsay is the shy and calm guy. He never speaks. He's always silent. And if you ask him something, the answer is short, like on the point. But when he gets drunk, when he gets a bottle of Jack Daniels in his hand, then it starts. Then he's going to about anything. Ville, of course, is the most stressed one on tour. Everybody wants his autograph, everybody wants interview here, there, Ville here, there, you know. So, of course, he needs most peace as he can get on the tour bus. It's not like any other band I work with, like English bands or American bands. They are totally different from Finnish bands. Finnish bands are really down to earth and they are really like know what they are doing.
Over the years, him have continued to attract fans across Europe. But what is it that attracts girls to this love metal band?
I think the one thing that got people interested, in fact, I'd say there were two things that got people interested. The first is Ville. He's a very attractive man. Like, ooh! Yeah. He has that sort of slightly soft, pretty boy, but at the same time kind of dangerous because he's always smoking and he loves his Jack Daniels. So the girls love that kind of thing.
When Ville sings, he's very, hot. It's very, his voice is.
Yeah, I like it.
Sexy,
it's so it's so down. Like, yeah.
I think when you've got anybody who's slim, attractive-looking guy, who takes his shirt off a lot, then the girls are bound to be interested.
They're just so wonderful guys, and the music is not my style, but still I love it. And they're from Finland, and Ville Valo is gorgeous.
The second thing that really, as far as I'm concerned, had a major impact on his success here in the UK and is starting to help them to break America is the fact that Bam Margera from Jackass was a big fan of theirs. I think it was just basically that he'd heard their music and he really started getting into them, and he had the him Heartogram logo tattooed on, and he approached them and he said, look, I'm really interested in producing like a promo video for you. Would you be up for it? And they're like, sure, we got no problem with that. And he produced the promo video for Buried Alive by Love, which was their first big hit single. And I think it was simply the fact that Bam was associated with that, Jackass being a massive thing on MTV at that time. All the kids were getting into it, it's a crazy guy doing disgusting things, or I should say crazy guys.
Becoming that famous is, of course, affecting you in a way. And I think he deals pretty well with it. But still, of course, you can see that he's a little bit more tight going.
Well, Ville is so gorgeous. Yeah.
Ville, I think Ville is the best thing in him.
Yeah, I think it's too. I've been in this bar in Helsinki and Ville has been there with me. No, in Lost and Found.
Okay.
And Ville is quite, I think, delicious.
But I think there's part of him that's kind of a bit overwhelmed by the whole fame thing, about people coming up and screaming at him or wanting their photos taken. I've never known him to say, no, I'm not going to sign an autograph, or no, I'm not going to have a photo taken. He's very, polite and he will do these things. But I think at the same time, I think he finds it a little bit unnerving.
It seems some fans are prepared to go to any lengths just to get a piece of their idol. In particular, one crazed fan who terrified Ville with a pair of scissors.
And I just saw her with scissors. But she was walking like this with the scissors. It looked like Psycho, like And I was getting like, fucking, what is she doing now, And she was taking the scissors and clipped off a bit of Bill's hair, and at the same moment I jumped to her, like, because I thought she was about to kill him, you know. It was like, man, and he got really psyched out, you know. He was like, oh my goodness, what was that, you know. It's like fucking hard to take for a guy.
In Finland, people are different. There's a different kind of approach to fame than there is over here. I don't think you get these kind of screaming girls. Just having spoken to people from Finland, it doesn't seem to be that kind of thing. People seem to respect you a little bit more, stand back a little bit more and mind your space. So suddenly kind of being caught in throes of screaming girls, it must be very disorientating.
I had one fan who had a little dog, and that fan even tattooed the dog with a autograph, believe it or not.
Yeah, maybe they're the first like real band that have succeeded outside Finland, so maybe that's why they're so popular in Finland also.
Ville is so like quite inside, like with when he's singing, he's like Finnish people are inside himself. It's interesting, I think.
There is no age limit. We have like, of course, the very young teenager fans, but we also have like people who are like over 50 coming to the concerts.
When Love Metal was released, it took the world by storm. It was mixed by legendary producer Tim Palmer, who had worked with artists such as U2 and Faith No More.
Yeah, it's a surprising album because it's for the first time, it's really good.
The album delivered soaring vocals and lashing riffs that had audiences around the world at its mercy. It was the seminal hymn album.
We had a great time recording it, and we're really happy actually how it is at the moment. And everybody seems to, people have heard it already. Most of the people have been liking it. It's a bit more, so there's a bit more of the Iggy Pop and the Stooges, that raw power, sort of like energetic, sort of like that sort of like aggression and all that. But it's still very melodic and very melancholic and very sentimental.
Now when they made their fourth album, Love Metal, it was different than the third previous ones, and I think that was a good thing for their career, because like if they would have made the same type of album that the three first ones were, that would have been a not that good thing for their career. But for some reason they found it the second gear, and Love Metal is more rock.
You can hear bits and pieces of all the three previous albums in there, but melted good together.
Every time we play him on ARFM, the phone lines take off. Particularly when we started playing Love Metal for the first time. They're a band that are generating new interest all the time.
Him albums are full of great songs, and they've made like 4 albums now, so I think that pretty much proves that he has a great songwriting skills, and lots of songs that when it's going to be like 2030 and we're going to look back in time and think what was cool and what was good in Finnish music in the late 1990s, early 2000s, I believe that those songs are going to be, put up, and people would say those songs were great during that time.
The next stage in hymn's meteoric rise is to break the US, an elusive market filled with challenges and rewards. So how will they do it?
The new deal for the band is with the Sire Records in America. Like a very, very famous guy signed them, Seymour Stein. Seymour Stein is like the guy who was like doing Madonna, the Ramones, and so on, He has a long history.
The States, they still haven't actually broken just yet. I know they have released the Love Metal album over there and it's doing okay. It's not doing massively well in the Billboard charts, but it's getting a little bit of interest.
They are making really a big effort about this band right now in the US. So, and once it really goes through in the US, and it's on the way there already, it will hit the world.
The hardest part in the States is the fact that I can't smoke on stage in New York and LA. That's going to be terrible.
Yeah, the stage is not actually hard. Yeah, I think all the rest of the things is hard. You know, it's not really hard to play, but it's all the things surrounding the event.
For example?
Like not knowing where you're going.
Okay.
And then waking up in the different room, which is almost the same to the previous room, but...
Oh, you hate hotels, yeah?
Yeah, I can't take it.
With so many bands each year trying to crack the US market, will HIM prove victorious? Or will they fail?
What happens if they don't make it? Because like now there's lots of fuss about Bummer Jera, you know, being in Finland and hanging around with these guys and directing their videos and like and they're really trying to make it big in the United States. But what if the same thing happens to them that's been happening to pretty much every Finnish band? What if they fail?
Many fans in the UK never realised that the band had previously released 3 albums before Love Metal. A compilation album was released to show fans what they'd been missing.
Some of the stuff we've been making didn't come out in this part of the earth, so it's just a compilation album and it represents what we've been doing last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, it was good for those people who thought that HIM, the band, started with the Love Metal album, which came out last year.
Razorblade Romance was a great album. Love Metal came out, it's even better. The next album, probably, if it goes it continues along in the same manner, will take them to worldwide acclaim.
Lots of secrecy surrounded the eagerly awaited 5th album, Dark Light. Veal was quoted as saying that the band was inspired by the works of the film composer Angelo Badalamenti.
Tim Palmer is producing this. He was mixing already the Love Metal, and Ville and him get along very well. So that's why Ville chose to record this new album with him. And they did it in the LA Paramore studios. And actually, Andy Wallace was about to mix the album, but it didn't work out. So Tim Palmer was taking over the mixing job as well. Actually, in the Jimi Hendrix studios, Electric Lady, yeah. And we were up there in Jimi Hendrix's old flat, where we had our listening party for record company, where Jimi Hendrix used to live. And people in the studio are telling stories that there's still the ghost of him around.
The last album, whilst Love Metal was more, if you like, better produced than Razorblade Romance, the edge was still there, the sort of hunger still sounded like it was there. I hope they don't lose that with future recordings. It's a very slippery slope to go down and quite an easy one to go down, because obviously, you know, money makes a difference at the end of the day. If they keep that same hunger, then, you know, the success should continue.
HIM continues to woo audiences around the world. But what is it about the band that's given them such longevity?
It's pretty much the same thing that makes maybe a guy called Robbie Williams so big and so good on stage. Like in HIM, there's like lots of they have black and white sides on that stuff. Like Ville Valo, he's like the bad guy, but at the same time, he's like this. When he gives interviews, he's like really smart, and you know, he seems like a great guy, a guy that maybe my mother would get along really, really well.
HIM have managed to successfully combine commercial rock music with an element of goth, and it's something which is new and exciting to fans. There really isn't anyone else really out there like them.
But when you open up the next, rock magazine, you see the same guy drinking red wine and, smoking cigars on stage looking really bad. And I think that's the thing that makes that band, so unique.
Ville's lyrics, they are very, very special. It's like poetry, and it's so many people can attach to that, and so many people feel, their feelings, or they can express their feelings through the lyrics. And then of course on top comes the music. The fans are very important for him, and the fans are very special with him because they're really fanatic. That all makes a good cake.
The Finnish rock scene continues to be influenced by hymn music. So what effect has that had locally?
Demos. Every day we have one demo, and we get lots of demos from Finnish bands. And sometimes I hope that a band called Him would have never even born, because maybe 40% of all the demos that we get, they sound a lot like Him. And we got lots of that type of band right now in Finland. I think it wasn't like that in 1995 or 1996 when Him was starting. Even Ville Valo was playing in a band that sounded like Primus, and it was like progressive and stuff like that. But because of the success of Him, I think it's really popular now to make that kind of music in Finland. And yeah.
Him probably have opened up the door for a lot of people. They've certainly opened up the door for Finnish rock music, and it's a bit of a sad thing in this industry. If one particular band comes along, then most of the record labels will look to that same area, either geographically or in terms of musical genre, to sign similar sounding bands. So with Him's success will come other bands who either sound like him or are very much aimed at the same market.
Nowadays, even the people out of rock business in Finland take rock business seriously. They see that it's okay, a Finnish band can make it, and it's Ville Valo is a household name among 40, 50-year-olds too, and Him is a household name, and so that's maybe the major impact that they had, the most important one.
It's been over a decade in the making, but finally this Finnish musical tour de force is poised to set the world on fire. And with the band now in full swing and ready for continued success, Him are in complete control of their future.
I've got plenty of ideas, but I just don't have the slightest idea what to do with those ideas, so I definitely need the time.
I think they're gonna be around for a long time, because the one thing that too makes that band unique is the fact that they have had this, self-confidence on what they do since the day one, and I think that really can be, heard on their first EP, that can be heard on their first album.
Because we've done 4 albums and 1 EP, and that's a lot. And actually, now listening to the compilation, I realized that we're like AC/DC. We're doing exactly the same thing over and over again with different producers, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it would be nice to do something fresh.
And if you have that kind of self-confidence, I think that makes a band so tight and so unique that those guys can do whatever they want for many years.
Ville is the front man. The rest of the guys are in the background. They do seem to be happy with that. I can't see any massive argument taking place. They just seem to get on really well. They've always seemed to get on really well, and they just seem happy with making the music that they're making.
Bands like Him, I think they've moved slightly with the times. They've moved to a more commercial sort of approach to their music. They've probably got a long future ahead of them.
And I think, that is one of the kind of the recipes for success, to be happy with what you're doing, to be happy with the music that you're making, and as long as it continues to make you happy.
Maybe Him is second of God. First is God, next is him.
So I think him was lucky. They just did it at the right time with the right song.
Yes, I'm very proud.
Anything like that. I'm saving my money for to get a cottage in the countryside of Finland for my parents. It'd be lovely, like with the lake, and you know we could sort of like go to sauna and like swim bit and stuff like that. That's very Finnish, and that's what I really like. So